This is about an antiquated, distorted, and sometimes, frankly, ridiculous approach to governing in D.C., where politicians' branding or vanity is put above the jobs, the health, the public interest of hundreds of millions of people. And it's all for a narrow appeal to D.C.'s definition of bipartisanship that's baked into political jargon as if it's automatically always a good thing.
Do it in a bipartisan way.
A bipartisan effort and results.
Work together this year on some bipartisan priorities.
Bipartisan tax bill.
On a bipartisan basis.
It grew in a bipartisan way.
That's what this bipartisan proposal is all about.
The basic concept seems pretty obvious. A plan is bipartisan when it has support from both parties. Okay. And the D.C. political class has come to elevate that goal as superior, the reasoning being that a bipartisan bill is probably more representative of the whole nation because it's bipartisan. Both parties are behind it, or even that the contents may be more balanced because it has the endorsement of people across a wider set of views. So, for example, it was seen as important when Democrats went out and supported the Reagan tax cuts, or when Republicans came in and supported Clinton on the NAFTA trade deal.
The North American Free Trade Agreement.
NAFTA passed with 16 votes to spare.
We're doing what's right for America without regard to the fact that it's a Democratic president.
With his prestige and his presidency on the line, President Clinton pulled it off.
And a bipartisan plan can involve compromise. Uber-liberal Ted Kennedy teamed up with the new president, George W. Bush, for an education bill that was supposed to mix reform ideas from both sides.
A big victory on Capitol Hill as members of both parties in the Senate voted overwhelmingly to approve a major new education bill.
A major education reform bill.
More money for schools, more testing for students, and for some families, more choices.
Victory for the president came thanks to a most unlikely ally, the liberal lion of the Senate, Ted Kennedy.
Now that was the old model of bipartisanship. And as you can see, people cheered it at the times to some degree. It may have worked to some degree. It was measured by how many politicians from both parties backed something. Now, that model is dead. We already know this because a popular president came into office offering bipartisanship to the other party after a big victory with approval above 60% during his first 6 months. I'm talking about then President Obama. And he faced a Republican who still went ahead organizing the entire GOP around literally stopping and being against anything the Democrats did.
What can Americans expect from Republicans now? Our top political priority over the next 2 years should be to deny President Obama a second term.
He said what he said. And he meant what he said. Mitch McConnell held to that even as the nation battled a huge and painful recession. And those politics of that Obama-Biden era, they look a lot like this Biden-Harris era. All House Republicans opposed Obama's 2009 stimulus package despite a recession and reaching across the aisle. There was documented outreach to Republicans. And when the bill passed, what did Republicans do? They went ahead and attacked Obama for their own refusal to collaborate. They blamed him for the fact that, according to the D.C. definition, they had shut down any bipartisan bill.
He missed a chance to have a bipartisan stimulus package.
Not one Republican was allowed to take part in the process.
I've been involved in a lot of bipartisan legislation around here, Mr. President, but I guarantee you this is not bipartisan.
They're bringing a partisan Democrat bill to the floor, and Republicans are poised to oppose it.
This is not just history. It's repeating itself as all congressional Republicans oppose the Biden relief spending. Two presidents facing reflexive Republican opposition, even in recessions, as D.C. elites repeat the one-sided cliches about trying to get everything to be bipartisan. Now, this is important tonight, and this could actually have a big impact on the future of the Biden era, whether there's more spending, whether you get more checks, what we do after COVID, because most of this stems from using the wrong premise. D.C. is applying a model of politician bipartisanship. So they measure this only by the politicians. And like I said, and like I just showed you, in the old days, maybe there was something to that. But McConnellism has made that completely moot, dead on arrival. Republican politicians don't back modern Democratic presidents, period. Now, that doesn't mean there's no bipartisanship possible. There is real bipartisanship out there in the country. But it's not politician bipartisanship. It involves you or your friends. It's people bipartisanship. And the model actually makes more sense. People bipartisanship is when you can see a leader or idea has support, regardless of party, because millions of Americans go beyond their own partisan labels to support it. So you measure it in people, not polls. Now, by this measure, Obama's stimulus was bipartisan. It drew a third of Republican voters behind it. And Biden's COVID plan has 59%, most Republicans behind it. Just think about that. If most Republican humans in America support a Biden spending bill, and none of their elected representatives do, that reveals a deficiency for those Republican representatives, not for Joe Biden. And this is so obvious, and yet D.C. elites ignore it. Watching some of the coverage can make you feel a little bit like Will Ferrell's Mugatu. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Now, if most Republican voters back COVID relief and these direct checks, and none of their so-called representatives represent their views on that, what gives? Are you thinking, gosh, Ari, are you telling me McConnell's that powerful? Every single Republican has to go along with this in the Congress? Not exactly. This is also super important. The deeper reasons are structural. People think of democracy as a thing where politicians represent their constituents, and they'll lose elections eventually if they're too out of step with all the constituents in their district or state. But that's not how this Congress works anymore. Because of politicians who use tricks to make it far less representative. They draw these super partisan districts, which the founding fathers hadn't even thought would ever happen. And those make it much harder for these incumbents to ever face a full wide group of voters. You may have heard it by its name, gerrymandering. HBO's John Oliver explains.
Republicans elevated this technique to an art form. Lawmakers should not be allowed to dilute our votes by drawing their own lines and essentially picking their own voters. That is what America is all about. That every one of us should get an equal chance to make a bad decision which things up for everybody else.
Now, the whole process can get complex, but all you really need to know is that Republicans pushed it hard. Both parties have benefited from gerrymandering to the point that over 50 House races could swing in 1 year from those tricks by incumbents, not what voters wanted. Districts drawn to be safe that pose very little threat to incumbents in the general election. But something funny happened along the way. It's actually hard to completely eliminate any voter pressure entirely. So these politicians with their maps and their gerrymandering, they ended up dealing themselves a more extreme, more narrow type of pressure. So they're safe in the general election, but worried more about getting primaried by the most extreme voices in their party, which have actually brought down even very powerful Republicans in primaries. And the data shows how all this combines to make representatives less representative of most voters, that's you, in their actual districts. So this is actually a huge problem for democracy. It also reinforces, if you take nothing else from me tonight, it reinforces how dumb it is to measure actual national bipartisanship by only counting D.C. politicians who are only looking at certain subsets of primary activists and not you, not all citizens of the U.S. Indeed, lately, some of the most bipartisan and popular ideas in America have been totally boycotted by congressional Republicans. So it makes no sense to wait on them to decide if something is popular or bipartisan. But there's a solution here in our minds. If you apply the measure of people bipartisanship, well, the Obama and Biden stimulus bills were bipartisan. So are some pending gun control plans. Most Republican voters back these universal checks, for example. Ditto for some of the infrastructure plans, with about half of Republican voters saying it should be a priority. So if key Senate votes, like Senator Manchin, want to make sure something has people bipartisanship, he wants to make sure that some of his own conservative constituents are on board with big spending bills, that's reasonable enough. But if he's just waiting on some of the most partisan politicians in America who don't even represent their district's views to tell him when to vote for something, well, that makes no sense. That is the surest way to play yourself. You take it all together and you can see that applying old definitions to a reality where they no longer apply not only makes no sense, it can strangle democracy itself at a time where people need government action, just like they needed those stimmy checks. Now, there's no overnight fixes to the big holes in our democracy like gerrymandering. I can't solve that intellectually or otherwise tonight. There's no overnight fix to how partisan primaries have grown more powerful than the actual elections mandated in our Constitution. Remember, elections are an actual legal thing. Primaries are just something that people privately created. They're not even always controlled by state law. But I can tell you this. Some of the costs of all of this can actually be reduced if we just come together and use an accurate lens for how things really work today, and not these antiquated political measurements. As the inventor Charles Kettering once put it, a problem well stated is a problem half solved. And the problem is letting partisan politicians seize leverage through hypocritical partisan games while lecturing even more popular leaders about bipartisanship. Please. The solution, as so often is the case in any working democracy, is cutting out some of those politicians and bringing this back to the people.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.